Hello and welcome to Business Today Pods. I am Siddharth Zarabi, and on this episode we have one of India's most well-known and foremost entrepreneurs, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, the founder of Biocon, a name that's known all across India and the world. And with me today on this episode of BT Pods, brought to you in association with PwC, is the chairperson of PwC in India, Sanjeev Krishan, a veteran of Indian industry with over 3 decades of knowledge across sectors. Kiran, thank you very much for your time with us today. Sanjeev, welcome. As viewers, you've seen in previous episodes, Sanjeev is a co-moderator on this discussion because we want to bring out the best with someone who's, in her own words, managed to do things with a lot of common sense, a lot of determination, and a lot of foolish courage. Kiran, I want to start by asking you to tell our viewers about that foolish courage. Or what was that instance or instances of foolish courage that you deployed to get where you are today?
So let me, start at the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. I think many of you know that I started Biocon on a rebound. Why do I say a rebound? Because I actually came back to India thinking I'm going to pursue a brewing career. And when none of the breweries would offer me a job, I decided to create my own job. And the job I chose, the venture I chose was quite a daunting venture. In the 1970s, that is in 1978, to try and be a pioneer in starting a biotech company, which really is very capital intensive, which is at that time was a huge risk because nobody understood biotech. And with no money to my name, with no business background, I think it was foolish courage to try and start a company of that, kind of a profile.
Sanjeev, you've spent a lot of time in your career meeting people across diverse sectors. Would you find a parallel in the kind of story that Kiran has, especially at startup phase?
I think for the generation of today, as she was saying it, and I was thinking that, we should actually socialize more of that. There are multiple other stories in corporate world and even otherwise. Now we know in the sports world and in the world of entertainment, media, otherwise as well. But I think these stories need to be told. In fact, as she was saying, I was almost thinking in my mind that I should ask her the question today that, Kiran, do you think that those stereotypes that you suffered from back in the 1970s, do you think that we have traversed a path, or do you think that still more needs to be done? Because, as we keep saying, from an economic standpoint, if all the women were to come into the workforce, India's GDP will grow so much percentage points. But do you see a real shift?
I think I still see a lot of aspiring women entrepreneurs face the same challenges that I faced 45 years ago. Because a lot of them come to me saying that, it's easier for a man to access capital than for a woman.
There's a PLI scheme across sectors, including here. But for the record, what would you say needs to be done to reach a sort of more reasonable level of dependence? The world is interlinked. You're not talking about 100% self-reliance, but what really needs to be done on this front?
So, the key starting materials and APIs that we basically rely a lot on from China can easily be made in India. It's not like it can't. But we need to have economies of scale. So up until now, it hasn't been a very exciting area because China does it at scale and it's so cheap. Today, for any company to compete with China requires huge scale. Huge scale means huge capital. So what happens is most of the companies do it at small scale and obviously can't compete with China. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. And I, for one, believe that the PLI scheme needs to focus on that aspect of how do you make these products, competitive. And I think you need to basically incentivize companies in terms of their capital needs. And so that's what the PLI scheme has tried to do, but it's a bit of, I'll give you after you do it. That's the PLI scheme. You don't get anything upfront.
I've covered the government for a better part of my career, and I've been amazed in the last 10 years, and I'll say this here for the record, that the only minister that I've never talk about capital constraints is Nitin Gadkari.
Absolutely.
And the highway and road development program and the scale and ambition, and of course backing of the government of Prime Minister Modi, that allows in our cabinet system of governance for this to happen. But Kiran, do you think there is a need for a similar Gadkari scale of thinking when it comes to Atmanirbhar pharmaceuticals in India? Because you cannot get there with these incremental steps. I completely agree with you.
So I would say that Indian pharma in terms of small molecules has got global scale. I mean, let's face it, we've done a fantastic job in terms of generics, okay? We basically cater to almost 40% of generic medicines around the world, okay? In many parts of the world, almost 80% of generic medicines comes from India. But even in the US, you got 25% of generic medicines or even 30% coming from India. So we've done a very good job on building global scale. Nobody can compete with us, not even the Chinese, okay? So I think there we built global scale and shown that, these kind of global scale or economies of scale help you to be globally competitive. And all this has been done with very little subsidy, I would say, over the years. But it's taken us decades to build this scale, okay? Now you come to the newer areas. So whether it is biologics, which is what we have done, whether it is peptides, which is a new area like, the GLP-1s, or if you come into, vaccines also is an area where we have scale,
yes,
right? But mRNA vaccines, we need to have that scale in the same new vaccine area.
I just had one observation, and actually maybe it's some reflections from you, Kiran. You mentioned about AI and how it could be disruptive, at the same time a huge enabler. And I'm just thinking that in a country like India, where it is so diverse, both from an economic standpoint, social standpoint, how can it really cause more socialistic outcomes? We saw that when we were battling COVID, with the new inventions coming in, and how it reaches, the last man on the street, so to speak. Will AI cause more division, if I may call it so, in terms of wealth creation, in terms of being able to monetize, and people who have and people who do not have, and I'm talking medicines, or is there a way that it can be more socially relevant?
So the way I look at it is that, AI is an enabler, okay? And AI has this potential of making huge social impact, and in fact bringing in inclusivity into various social initiatives. So why do I say that? I mean, at a recent Bangalore Tech Summit, there was a discussion around AI and why India is poised to be a big leader in AI. And the reason was that AI on its own is not worth much, but AI plus people is worth a lot more. So what we bring to the table is huge amounts of data. And when you have huge amounts of data that AI can analyze and apply, I think you can do wonders for various things. I mean, even if you want to know how welfare schemes are being spent and how they're impacting people, AI can do it very, accurately for you.
Right.
If you want to look at how to create a very efficient universal healthcare model, without technology you can't. So I think the National Digital Health Mission that the government is embarking on is the only way to do that. And AI has a very big role to play on that.
With that, it's a wrap on this conversation. We'll come back with more on BT Pods. Do stay tuned in. I'll see you again. Until then, goodbye.